Yeah. This is not done. We're going down more.
Okay.
All right, should we go?
Yes.
Okay. 3, 2, 1. Welcome to the Big Announcement Coming Soon podcast. I'm one of your hosts, Michael Bull, and joined today by a new guy. Well, he was been on the show in the past, but now will continue to be a regular. That's our marvelous David Collette. How you doing, pal? Nice to see you.
Yeah, what's up? I'm pretty good. Yeah, all things considered.
So he's hanging out in Switzerland, which is always nice. And we're joined as usual by Jeff Renson, close down the road from me in Central Oregon. So good to see you guys.
USFTX.us still withdrawing.
Yeah, so we're gonna be having a lot of talk today about this whole calamity with FTX. I read about it. I'm still more clueless. I mean, it is such a common part of the narrative now that it made the New York Times headlines.
Mm-hmm. It was on NPR last night.
Oh, well, then you know. And then you know for sure. So we'll get to that in a moment, but Jeff will start with the news. Jeff?
Yeah, I started pulling news stories like usual as soon as we wrapped last week's show. And look, Lebanon, everything's been crashing for years. The bank is holding your money. People are using USDT. They're using Bitcoin. It's a great thing to talk about. But I mean, it got a little overshadowed. I do think this is the long term, right? FTX was an exchange. It isn't Bitcoin. Lebanon is using crypto. Shell announced today they're going to start mining Bitcoin in 2023. Again,
Shell, like Shell Oil Company?
Shell Oil, yeah. So with all the
Shell
extra
Energy Company, I should say,
burn off, right? You capture that, you produce more because there's a lot of issues with waste in oil production.
Okay.
So they're going to start mining Bitcoin, and if that's the difference of long term versus the current meltdown. And the last one I think started to be big news really in minutes or the days before FTX everything happened is Library lost their case with the SEC and Library was declared a security. They said it's bad news for everybody. One thing I think was important that a few people pointed out about the Library token was there was no use when they were selling it, and there was no use during the case. They actually never developed anything, whereas other tokens are out there and being used, and there's an argument of the started as a security, developed into a utility, and Library never hit that point. So while they're saying this could affect a lot of other people and a lot of other currencies, I think it really draws that line of is there a use case or not? Okay.
Yeah, but you're saying they lost the case to the SEC. Do you mean they lost it in court?
Yes, they lost their court case.
So the court is at this point interpreting. Okay.
Is a security.
Okay, gotcha. Which it was classified as in the beginning, I assume.
They released it as a token, but with only potential future use cases, and there was no use of the Library token. It was just them talking about it while selling it, and that was one of the big line that was noted by a lot of people between that and other tokens that do have use case, because this court case will have ripple effects throughout the industry.
Okay, but just real quick, but doesn't the SEC by default classify everything as a security if it's in the crypto world?
The SEC's role, and I was listening to podcasts on this yesterday, is to offer guidance for disclosure. Their role is to force you to disclose information to investors. Gary Gensler's decided that their role is to pioneer new regulation and put people in jail and provide no regulation clarity, right? He won't answer questions, but he will start court cases. The interesting thing about it is that when Congress looks back at SEC's mandate, it's to force disclosure and regulate that, or to look at the regulation of disclosures from investments to the investors.
Mm-hmm.
What they're doing now is way beyond the purview of what they're supposed to do.
Well, doesn't it sound like it is exactly in the purview if they're handing off that regulation to Congress and to the courts?
Oh, but they should be offering guidance on what a security is before offering regulation. There is no guidance. There's no knowing what to do.
Yeah, but
they won't answer questions.
But it's new territory, so if they're not supposed to create the guidance, they're just supposed to enforce the existing expectations for guidance, right? I mean, we're getting in the weeds here. But.
Yeah. No, I think it's kind of, I mean, yeah, we can discuss the micro of it, but I think what more important or interesting is the macro, like, what is the SEC's game here? Well, I think probably like everyone like says, okay, why are you going after all these small projects, and then you let FTX just go by. I don't know. I mean, my guess would be kind of like they're going after clear, obvious cases where they can make a point, and then hoping that people after the fact clean up their own act a bit more, and then they'll keep going down the line. Because I think like they don't want to do any damage to investors who bought Library Token, ideally. But there's probably very few of those. Whereas if they went after a big, ICO, I don't know, Tezos or something like that.
XRP.
Yeah, sure. Although XRP is a bit different, because it's not an ICO. There's continual sale of XRP tokens over time, even after they were told they were a security. So it's like, there's a lot of kind of debating on what is or isn't at the moment. But yeah, it's an interesting one, because I think the problem is that more and more these tokens are going to they're facing winds from the front, which is FTX, and like all these VCs own all these tokens and they're going bankrupt. What are they going to do with them? Sell them. And then are these things legal anyway? And so like altcoins are getting compressed significantly now, I think.
To me, it seems like a rather shrewd way to pursue it.
Mm-hmm.
From Git's point of view. So
because there's like one of those whack-a-mole games where there's just a million moles, and so you just have to get one or two of them in the beginning, and less moles come up, and then one or two more, and
right. And when everything's got to sort itself out, it seems like they've kind of developed a framework for that to start happening. I don't know. Should we move on to FTX and the disaster that happened?
Yes.
Okay, so what happened? FTX is the third largest exchange in the world. It sounds like they're doing a lot of shady stuff offshore from the U.S. And then you had Changpao Zhang, or C, I guess as people call him, in Binance world. It had a 20% equity in it. Then the due diligence started freaking. What's going to take over the whole thing? The due diligence started freaking out. We don't know whether that's just because he thought it was a competitive threat or whatever. But maybe that's it, and we can just conclude the show. I said everything there was.
There are significant holes and postulations on your side. I might want to clear up.
Hey, I just pulled the summary from the New York Times that I read this morning.
Wait, you didn't watch the video I made yesterday and pull your summary from that?
I did, but I didn't know what you were talking about, and now I know more about what you're talking about. I got to have that background before I get into it. So give some background. Yeah, what happened? Like, what happened?
What happened, I think, and this is an update. I released a video yesterday with just some updates, and things have changed a lot. What happened was Alameda, the hedge fund, needed money. They blew up. They lost money with Luna and their trades.
Okay, so what's their connection though to FTX? So the guy that's his group. He owns both, right?
Yeah. So Sam Bankman-Fried started Alameda, then he went and started.
Yeah, step back.
Yeah.
Let's step back to like a couple of steps before all that. Like essentially, like
I just want to make the point that he stole user funds and sent them to Alameda, because a lot of people are talking about the holes here and the holes there, and he's sorry about this. He stole user funds and sent them to his other company, is the bottom line to all of it. But yeah, there's way more background.
A third company.
No, Alameda.
Alameda, to his original. Yeah, okay, got it.
Hey, David, what's that other background you had?
Yeah, I mean, so let's go medium length. So like, if you start back, where does Sam come from? So he made a lot of money arbitraging the difference in price of Bitcoin in Japan versus America, and like, if it's like $1,000 difference at the time, you could clear on $1 million, like a lot of money each time. So he did that a lot of times. So that's kind of his background. He's a quant trader. So anyway, so he starts FTX exchange, onboards lots of people, all the rest of it's kind of known. But then he also has Alameda on the side as well. And that's the prop trading firm. And so for any bank, you would have your investment firm segregated from your customer firm. So you're not like, the investor people on the investor side. You're not using your funds as the
co-mingle. You want a firewall.
Exactly.
Okay,
and so everyone just assumed that FTX was doing this, right? I mean, even the American government, who was kind of working with them on regulations and all sorts of things, in myself
included. Can I jump in really quick? FTX.com or FTX US? Because every time Sam went to DC, was he discussing FTX.US, which wasn't involved in any of this? All the fraud happened on .com. So I feel like every trip to DC might have been about the other website, and we keep on conflating the two.
And just
Well,
real
let's
quick,
see.
the reason to have the two is the stuff he was doing in the .com, that's in the Bahamas or whatever. It isn't legal. It doesn't comply to the
Leverage
legal framework
trading
for the
and
U.S.
Yeah,
exactly.
that's the super
It's kind of
irony
like
of this
Binance
one.
does that too. They have the Binance US, and then they have the rest of the Binance. At least they have a foothold here in the US. Okay, so similar situation, but go on.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And so like that, but that's the huge irony of the situation. If they did, if they did have those regulations that FTX US had, this wouldn't have been a problem. But they have FTX International, which is allowed to just not follow any rules, and so they were allowed to commingle funds and all sorts of things, and they did. So it's actually
was Alameda based in the US?
no, probably not. I don't know, Seychelles.
How would you commingle? So
Yeah,
it was
no.
offshore. The point is.
Well,
So
and
yeah.
even commingling from the stuff coming out today, Sam just sent money. He just took user funds and sent it. So it's not like the
Well,
books were commingled
yeah.
so much as money was just taken out the top. So I don't think it would be legal because it's an international framework. I think it's able to be slipped by and not seen initially because this happened in Q2.
Well, I was watching, like the Real Vision on it, and it gave it a good example. Essentially, like when Luna failed and 3AC went under and everything like that, Alameda also went under, but we didn't know it. And so what they did was they said, "Hey, FTX, we're like super underwater by $4 billion or something like that at the time." And then Sam was like, "Okay, what we'll do is we'll take FTT token worth $4 billion." Which is customer funds, attributed to that token, and then just give it to you, and that'll back you. When they did that,
with
they
no
moved,
transparency or disclosure.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
And
one
then
more
when
level. Hold on. They
Hmm.
sold them the FTT at a discount. So then Alameda had FTT. They used that FTT as collateral to borrow FTX user funds like USDC and Bitcoin.
Right, exactly. So that was the
If you
huge.
use it as a collateral, then it's getting disclosed.
Well, no, as soon as
Somebody.
A collateral for whose money did FTX loan them profits? Turns out they didn't. Right? We could assume a lot of things. And why were they given the FTT tokens in the first place? But they did that loop, and then they went and took the user funds also.
Yeah, so essentially, like what was a solvent marketplace suddenly took their exchange token, which was essentially owned like 95% by them, and said this thing is worth 22 to $30, and we're willing to essentially leverage gamble against it. And then they kept losing money, and then essentially they were down like 8 billion essentially, or essentially they had like FTT worth that much, and then FTT went down to $3, and that's where that 8 billion went. So people are like, oh, where'd that 8 billion go? How can you lose $8 billion? Well, essentially is based on what they held, and they held garbage. And so like that, but specifically because they made it garbage, right? And so yeah, it's super nuts. And what's happening right now is like funds are being moved out of Alameda and potentially, we don't know what it is. Maybe it's bankruptcy court already really on it, but doesn't seem that way. It seems more like it's like they're paying off out to some people. I don't know. It's just nuts because they haven't made any announcements. There's no announcement going on, and yet funds are leaving Alameda and FTX. And they were like shorting USDT before. Like, so they're like, it's not like they're like, oh, we messed up really badly, please help us. They're like actively still like being criminals.
Yeah, Alameda's still trading.
Super nuts.
FTX deposits were open yesterday. They're seeking, and part of it's funny because depending on what the tweets are, when CZ announced he was looking into acquiring FTX, FTT went up and Sol went up, and I'm sure they dumped a bunch on that news, knowing CZ would see the books and pull out, which he did. And now Sam's tweeted this morning, I'll raise the 9.6. We'll find people. The exchange is still good. And I'm sure, FTT is up to $3.80 today, which is almost double, right? It hit $2 yesterday. So somebody's up 2x and they got to sell it. So I think this is all short term. Alameda has enough illiquid coins to push things around in the market to try to exit them a little bit at a time. Is my guess what's happening right now.
Yeah, well, this is where it gets to the nub of the conversation.
All right, get us to the nub.
All right, so essentially, like, because Alameda and FTX have to liquidate basically their entire book to try and just make as much money possible to give back to their customers as possible, they have to. You're basically looking at what does FTX own? What does Alameda own? A lot of Solana, a lot of FTM, a lot of FTT, there's a lot of different coins that they own, that those coins are now going to get dumped.
So you're saying they own them to such a level that it's going to have an impact on the market, on the price.
Yeah, a huge amount, billions.
We've talked about
so they're throwing a
weeks.
ton of supply into the market.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
When they launched these tokens, they just kept that supply. That's something we've always talked about, that fully diluted valuation versus the market cap. And if they're holding 90% and that FDV was super high, now the FTV is kind of coming to bear, right? They're going to dump it all.
It was this experiment that happened in the last couple of years, essentially, where people were just like, all right, what we're going to do is value the company at like $4 billion, release 5% of the tokens onto the market. People will buy and sell it as if it's worth $4 billion, but actually that's just created by us. And so like
faith of what we say, not based on anything else. No, nothing like a typical marketplace where the market sets the price. They're setting the price in advance,
and 10% of it's trading.
Coalesce around it,
and then defending it too. Like that's what the FTX was doing. Was like, oh, if it got too low, they just bought it back up again, and then probably with customers' funds, and so like it's a rigged marketplace essentially what was happening, and so there's the carry on from the nub, and that's the problem in that. Once this happens, this is such a huge event. FTX is so huge. Alameda has to sell off its items and all these coins. It has the potential of having a kind of a chain reaction where you're just kind of like, okay, well, who touched Alameda's property? And then it was this token company, and like they had a sole agreement with Alameda, and suddenly you're out of money. And what's the other token they own? Oh, it's AVEX. Oh, okay. Well, now AVEX starts going down, and then someone over here is going to get liquidated on AVEX. So there's like these huge chain of events, and I personally think that it's probably going to hurt alts a lot, because essentially right now, where are you safe in alts? How do you
So any faith in alts is going to be.
And what about the VCs who aren't affected? Are they just like, yeah, it's fine. I'm cool holding a bunch of like coins that have just kind of shown to be able to go down like 100% in like a day, or are they going to start selling too? So I think, but what it does do is you've cleared a clearly bad actor that no one knew was a bad actor out of the market entirely. It's hugely positive for the space, despite it being extremely damaging.
Well, I mean, is it positive? Because like, as you just said, a bad actor you didn't know was a bad actor. So the paranoid person...
We didn't
might
know
say
he was
how many
criminal.
more of those people are out there.
We didn't know he was criminal. We knew he was releasing shitty tokens, overvaluing them, and preying on the marketplace. We knew he was looking at the open order book and liquidating people against him.
Exactly.
We were all making money too, but in the long term, it was predatory.
These are all the best lessons, right? What did we learn? You can't just create value and like have it swapped around between a bunch of VC billionaires and have it be sustainable. But as the village or city or whatever burns to the ground, what is left? What is left is Bitcoin and Ethereum. Like they continue to produce blocks. They continue to hold value. They have a purpose.
Well, you say holding value, but they have lost value. Now maybe they should have lost more value, but it's not like you're not seeing a flight right now to Bitcoin and Ethereum.
Should have lost way more. Yeah, I mean, I think like
is that overly optimistic? But it shakes the whole foundation of faith and the whole concept of crypto.
Yeah,
now maybe not you guys because you're so deeply embedded in it, but for those of us more on the surface level, we're like, this. Then it's back to this is just a scam.
Yeah,
I could say that.
But that's the critical thing. Like if you think about it, most people who are in crypto, no. Most people who are in crypto right now, seeing this, they think this is a scam. What do? You leave. You sell your stuff. You leave. So who's left in the market right now? True believers, and they value the price at around 17K. That would, in theory, be the bottom. Now, I think it'll probably go lower. There's a lot of liquidations to happen. But what's interesting to think about is not so much what the current news is, it's what the current news portends. It means that, you're seeing a flush out of anyone who's on the edge about crypto, they're leaving. But the people who really believe, like myself, I just went all in. So, it's kind of, you're seeing the swap of holdings. And whatever price
only time will tell on that, whether it was a big, huge shakeout for the market or for the five. When we want to move to mainstream, where the big money could potentially be, this shakes that. When the third largest exchange is down, all for nefarious reasons,
Yeah, but I mean, at the same time, Lehman went down, and we're still gambling in the stock market. No problem.
Yeah, but that was a regulated one, so there's more faith behind it, rightly or wrongly.
Well, I mean, that's probably even worse then, right?
Part of the, but that's
Well,
part of
I
the
don't know.
reason we're in. But part of the reason we're into crypto is Lehman went down and it was regulated, and they were breaking all the rules and stealing all our money, and the creation of fiat is fake, and the metals market's been manipulated, and they're still pumping the housing market now. It's going to happen again in crypto, but let's not pretend this isn't exactly how banks function. They just get bailouts.
Yeah,
The only
it's
difference
fair.
is there's no bailout for an international company. He didn't
Yeah.
do anything banks didn't do, right? Laundering money for terrorists, all that stuff is HSBC business. It's what banks do is their bread and butter to make money is break the law, pay tiny fines, and go on doing what they do and get bailouts.
Well, fair enough, because they have political clout, but there is more regulation in that.
Well, I mean, I think,
But it doesn't change anything. It just means the taxpayer would have bailed out FTX. They were a bank.
the
Right,
biggest.
but maybe they wouldn't have become a bank because they would have had to comply more to get to that level, and maybe they wouldn't have done as nearly as shady of things. See, this is my faith in institutions versus you younger folks who don't believe in institutions or have less.
Oh no, I'm in it. I believe in
less
institutions.
faith, I should say. Less faith.
I just remember 2008.
Yeah, I know. I
Yeah.
was there.
But I mean, I think the thing is, it's like these events lead to good change that then adds to the company. So, for example, Binance and a whole bunch of exchanges are now going to produce proof of reserves.
Okay.
And when Binance
I
did
heard
that, if you see their reserves, it's nuts. They got like $22 billion of BUSD just sitting there for an event like this. That's what FTX should have had. I mean, but they didn't. So the problem was, it's not like Lehman Brothers was better than FTX. Why? Because Lehman never kind of pegged their investments against a Lehman buck, which was different than the American dollar. But other than that, it was pretty similar. Yeah.
Could you
But
call
I mean, I
a
think-
default swap the same thing as an FTT token?
Yeah, that's a good point. I mean, it is backed by something though, not just Probisco. And,
true.
like
Very
a house,
true.
which then yes.
Essentially, I think what it kind of comes down to with FTT is they backed their token and their exchange and their whole thing by themselves. They truly believed that they were smarter than everyone else, and so it wasn't a problem to commingle funds because they were a sick quant trader and they're going to make more money for people. So who cares? And that's actually, and they probably would have gone away with it too, except for those meddling kids over at Binance.
All right, we only got a couple minutes left on this topic. Where are we going to be in a year or two from now? Are we going to have another FTX type of fiasco happen, or is the market going to have regulated and calmed itself? And
It depends on where you are. I would argue America already did, and so that's why FTX is not going down and stuff like that. But will the rest of the world get up to speed in the next year? Absolutely not. Yobit still exists. There's all sorts of crazy, because people want to take a lot of the reason that these exchanges were used by people because they don't do KYC at certain levels. A lot of people are not KYC'd because they truly believe in like the anonymity, and some are probably trying to avoid taxes and stuff. But yeah, like overseas, people will always want to use non-KYC exchanges and stuff for a lot of different reasons. So yeah, this will always happen. There will always be exchanges that blow up. But at this level, I think this is probably the last time this ever happens, because I think regulation will truly come in and be like, nope. Yeah. And you can't get big enough unless you get regulated by big enough markets: America, Europe, Japan.
So,
all right, so much for a libertarian point of view.
So, Mike, how do you feel now as far as clarity on what the hell's been going on? Before we get to, I love the story you brought today, but does it make sense? Are there things still holes in the logic for you?
Well, I guess when I'm looking over here at the Twitter feed, when Sam Bankman, it says Forbes is saying it's worth 17 billion. I guess my biggest call is, why would he screw all this up? Like, so he only ends up with 900 million if he comes clean. And so it's interesting how human nature happens. His story is not unusual, that people who go in perhaps as good people can allow themselves to be corrupted.
He wasn't just a good person, though. He's an effective altruist, which means his goal in life, and they made a lot of cheesy videos on this, was to make as much money as possible and give it away. So in the same way that people driven by a mission commit atrocities because the mission is the moral superiority, he's going to save the world. He's going to give all his money to poor people. So him stealing degen money to give to his genius buddies at Alameda to make more money, because we can afford to lose it, and he's going to save the world. He
Gotcha.
wasn't just greedy, he was morally superior to everybody.
And then I think that's true. And then on the very micro sense, like you've got like a 25-year-old or something like that, who doesn't sleep very much in the office, doesn't get a lot of contact with people. Suddenly a whole bunch of projects they invested in blew up. He's down in the hole $4 billion, and his buddy over in Hong Kong says, "Dude, I need $4 billion, or we're all going under." And this exact situation happened in June, and so instead he just kicked the can down the road and kept getting in more and more trouble, and now it's blowing up. So it kind of happened to him quickly, and then he dealt with it really poorly and continued to do so.
Okay, well, we'll have to come back and talk about that later. We're going to take a break right now, and we're going to say goodbye to Sam Bankman, the Robin Hood, now I've been told, of crypto. All right, Jeff, finish us off here with this whole destruction of the crypto market.
It's Mount Gox for now.
Ooh,
We've had
yeah.
things that get torn down before, but like I said, Shell's mining Bitcoin. They're finding Bitcoin in popcorn boxes. The U.S. government still cares. It's an exchange. It's not the cryptocurrency space completely. It's a section of it, and it's not Bitcoin specifically.
Okay. So you went ahead and stole my lead about popcorn, but we'll run from there. Now, I don't know about you guys, but I frequently will go on the internet and just like keyword in interesting popcorn stories. And this one came up. Feds say they seized 50,000 stolen Bitcoin stored in a popcorn tin after a 10-year search. Now, your typical person would think like, wow, how did they get all those Bitcoins into a popcorn can? I thought the coins were bigger than that because 50,000 a lot, but that is not the case. The digital tokens were previously held by James Jong, who has pled guilty to stealing them from Silk Road back in the old days. And so they were searching his home and they found a single board computer. This was interesting, hidden in a popcorn tin in a bathroom closet that held all these digital tokens. So they weren't actually coins. I was happy to know. So they've been looking for 10 years.
There were like 14 cashless coins there.
Oh,
oh,
okay.
Nice. That's awesome.
And they found it in November of 2021 for a value of $3.3 billion, and now it's only worth just over $1 billion today. So it just sort of goes to show crime doesn't pay because the value of the crime just goes down and down and down of the tokens you get.
Oh, it's more you can't cash them out is the real key thing. Like, because this happened with Razzle Dazzle or whatever her name is.
Well,
and
it does say that the Justice Department, this article, it says that in 2017 sold off other Bitcoin taken directly from Silk Road for 48 million. Now they held on to that. So it's an interesting question for the feds. Like, what do we do with this? Do we play the market a little bit? Do we get all our buddies together and say, when's it going to go up? And then that's when you sell it. It's kind of funny.
I think.
Well, yeah, there's
isn't there a regulation of like the timeline of when they have to sell these properties?
I'm sure there is. There must be something. They probably just follow that so they don't have to mess with it.
There are rumors that like Belarus and places like that have like Bitcoin that's been seized that's just sitting there and stuff like that, and they're like, "Woo, this is awesome."
Yeah, it was Lukashenko or whatever who runs that country, and that's basically a satellite of Russia.
Yeah,
so.
But I think this highlights a great thing. If people talk about money laundering and all that stuff with Bitcoin, like he couldn't, right? You can't get it to an off ramp. You can't get it into cash. There's places to spend Bitcoin, but as soon as you move it out of that account to spend it, even if you're spending the Bitcoin, you can see it on chain. So
it lights that up, yeah. So what was he hoping to do with it in the 10 years from now? He could pull it out of the popcorn can and.
I don't know.
I don't think he thought about it. Yeah, he just stole it and then he realized, well, actually, as most of these people do, like, wait a minute, I've just signed up for a life of crime and running.
Honey, you got a popcorn can?
And he stole it in Silk Road. Would have been what, 2012?
Yeah.
So when he stole it, it wasn't like he was gonna go to Gemini and deposit it and have it, wired money to his bank from his Gemini account. Like, I don't know, Coinbase wasn't functioning in 2012, so there probably was no plan.
So he just held on to it, and it got more value. The whole situation got worse, and he had to hold on to it more and more and more and more. You can never get rid of it. So interesting how that works. All right, I think that's all we have for today. We probably ran a little bit long. David, nice to chat with you.
Yeah, you too.
As always, it's nice to see you in the daylight.
Yeah, great to see you guys. Good to see the sun today. And we'll see what happens the next couple of days with everything.
Yeah, Bitcoin is officially at 17, I think. 17,268.
Yeah. I'll give you your prediction for next week. It's going to be up or down significantly.
I see. I think unless there's some new surprises with the stock market going up, maybe the whole thing will go up just a bit to 18 or 19.
Yeah, I think today looks like another little exit pump for some alts, but we're going to drop back down to that 15 range, but I think if we've seen the bottom, we might see it again. But Bitcoin was headed up, and like we said, Bitcoin's not the rest of the crypto space. We might see that decoupling, Bitcoin dominance rising, Bitcoin goes up while everything else just stays flat.
Okay.
The smell
We'll
in the
talk about
market, the
it.
smell on crypto Twitter is fierce, so that is a positive sign.
All right. Well, back for another smell test next week.
Cheers, gentlemen.
Yo.